up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply Breeze. My name is Bree. If you are new here, we have a lot to do in the garden today. We need to go ahead and get all of the beds topped with some fresh compost from a dairy farm. I need to also fill up that one bed that we built, and then the other bed that we built 2 beds. So we need to finish filling those up, get some good compost in them, just start building up that soil, and then the rest of the beds just need to be topped with compost so we can keep adding some good nutrients into the soil. The next thing we need to do is spread compost out on our lawn just to really help the grass grow. It provides some good nutrients into the grass as well. So we have a full truck. My neighbor was very kind and allowed me to use her truck. So we have a full truck full of composted manure. This stuff is amazing. So let's go ahead and get it started. Friend, this was a very busy day. It was a very productive day and we did get so much done. So what I did was I went in on a full truck bed load of composted manure with my neighbor. My neighbor has a really good relationship with a local dairy farm, and they have piles and piles and piles of manure that's been composting for quite some time, and they sell it to the public. And so she took me there last year and we absolutely loved it, and I think it really helped improve our soil. So what I am doing is taking several wheelbarrows full and going ahead and I am topping all of our garden beds with this composted manure. This manure is still just a little bit hot. It is mostly broken down, but you'll see as I go through and top all the beds that there are some clumps that I do need to break apart, and I am breaking those apart and spreading them out just so that way when the time comes for us to plant all of our seedlings into the ground, we're not going to burn them essentially with how rich in nitrogen, I believe, the soil is. So each of the beds got at least 2 wheelbarrow fulls of this composted manure. It was a gorgeous day. It was about 9:30, 10 a.m. when I started getting all of the manure moving and onto all of our beds. I also needed to go ahead and fill up the back 2 beds that we put in our backyard. If you missed that video, I will link it here for you, but essentially we cut one of our garden beds in half because it didn't get enough sun, and then we built another 2 by 8 foot bed just to help with growing food on our small little property. We are limited in the sun that we get, and so we are trying to make the most of what we got. So this composted manure I owe to the fact that our soil is improving. When Reed and I first put these garden beds in back in, I believe it was 2023, I think we did it April of 2023, the soil that we purchased in bulk, we ordered over 15 cubic yards of soil, and the soil wasn't great. We still got a decent harvest of food. Honestly, any food that we get out of the garden is always a blessing, so I'm not complaining, but the soil needed some work. And so the following year, I threw in some soil amendments, and my neighbor introduced me to this local dairy, and we topped all of the beds with compost, and things seemed to really thrive in the garden in 2024. Everything seemed to be happier and like it had more nutrients available to it. And so this compost has really helped improve the soil within our garden beds. So this year I wanted to do the same thing because the soil still isn't great, and then the soil compacted, and then I also had to move some soil into the new garden beds. So it was time to just go ahead and fill up more composted manure onto our garden beds just to really help build up the soil. If you are new to raised bed gardening, you have to source the soil from somewhere, and the soil we got, again, it wasn't the greatest, but it was what was affordable. And so sometimes you have to make the choice to get a more reasonably priced soil and amend later, or get a higher priced soil and you'll still likely have to amend anyways, because that's just the nature of soil, especially here in Colorado. We have a lot of clay and a lot of sand in our soil, so it's naturally going to have to be amended more often than not. So if you are looking for an easy way, or I wouldn't say easy, this required some hard work, but it wasn't necessarily difficult. If you're looking for a good way to amend your soil in your regular in-ground garden or even in your raised garden beds, I highly recommend you see if you can find a local farm or a local dairy that composts their animal manure, because that is some of the best source of nutrients to improve your soil. For that entire truckload, we only paid $25. I don't know if that's simply because my neighbor has a really good relationship with them or if that's just what they charge, but I know that there are a couple other homesteaders who pay twice that for less. Something to look around and maybe do some research into, because this is far more affordable for us to do and for us to amend our soil and improve it than going to the big box stores. Going to the big box stores, I would have paid a minimum of like $3 or $4, I think, per yard. Okay, not even like a cubic yard. I think it's per square yard or just a yard of soil. I'm not 100% sure. The bags aren't very big, and I would have paid $3 or $4 per bag of composted manure, and I would have needed a lot of them. I would have spent so much more money going with the big box store route. There's nothing wrong with that if you've got a small area to fill, but from a cost-effective standpoint, it's not the best. Ideally, I would have really liked to have gotten this done a few weeks ago. However, Reed and I have just been incredibly busy, and it really just hadn't worked out up until now. I got this done the first weekend in May, and I would have probably liked to have had this done maybe the last 2 weeks of April, but you make do with what you've got. As you will see here in a few minutes, is we are actually going to be planting out our brassicas. I have had our broccoli and our cabbage outside full-time for about the last week and a half. They're ready to go. They've been staying out overnight. They've had a little bit of cooler temperatures and they've handled it just fine. But I have been waiting to get this composted manure worked into our soil. That way I can get plants in the ground. I didn't want to put plants in the ground and then have to work around them. It runs the risk of me then accidentally damaging the plants that I put in the ground. So I chose to wait until I got this done. And now I can say we successfully have broccoli, cabbage, and potatoes in the ground. Good morning. It is the next day. I had a lot that we were getting accomplished and then I wanted to relax. It was also really hot outside and there were a bunch of kids running along the path beside our house, and I don't film other people's kids. I don't even put like my nieces and nephews on the internet, so I'm not going to do that to somebody else's child. So I got up early this morning. It is about 7:30. It is quiet, it is Sunday, and so hopefully people are just slowly getting up and waking up, which means I have time to film outside and get our cabbage, our broccoli, and our potatoes in the ground. I'm really happy I was able to get all the compost put onto all the beds, and now we can finally get some more things into the ground, which is super exciting. But first, coffee. Yeah, let's go. Alright, so let me show you kind of what I decided to lay the broccoli and the cabbage out. I am going to have one of each broccoli and cabbage left over, and I'm probably just going to give that to my mom. And then I'm going to show you where I'm going to put the potatoes. Let me give you a layout of what we're doing today. So last night before I went to bed, I decided that this was how I was going to space out my broccoli. We have our asparagus here, and so we're going to have the broccoli running all the way. We've got like a bar here to help support the bed because of how long it is. So we're going to run the broccoli all the way here. And then the cabbages, I decided to offset every other all the way down. And then this will allow me to plant in these pockets. There won't be big pockets, so I'm probably just going to predominantly do flowers, but that is the current plan. And then all along this trellis is going to be beans. Let me show you how
all those seeds we started are doing. So this is our hail netting system in action. But all along the back there, this is all lettuces. And then we have radishes all along the kale. And then our spinach had really, really good germination. I also have some Swiss chard germination here. And then these are beets, and our peas, we do have some germination. And I'm okay that there are pockets because we were going to plant other things along with the peas here. And then over here are peas. I thought I planted some over here. We don't have any germination, which is fine. But we got peas all along here. And then beets. And I had a volunteer nasturtium, which is super, super exciting. And we're just going to let it live here because I love nasturtiums and they're pest deterrents.
This is my second year growing cabbage in the garden, and I was really excited to grow cabbage last year. My green cabbages did pretty decent last year. The heads didn't get huge, but I did get a cabbage harvest, and that in itself was super exciting. I always try to add something new into the garden to see if it works and to see if it's something that I like, and cabbages last year were definitely a success. So I'm very happy this year that we are going to attempt to grow at least 8 cabbages in the garden. I like to make things like sauerkraut, I like egg roll in a bowl, and I don't typically buy cabbage outside of that, so the fact that I'm growing it for us, I think I'm going to enjoy a lot again this year. Also, broccoli. Broccoli has been a huge challenge for me in our garden. We live in Colorado. The climate can be very harsh. I am currently reading a gardening book on Colorado, and they even confirm it. Like, seasoned gardeners who garden here in the state just have a hell of a time because the climate goes from cool to really hot, and we get really intense wind, we get really intense heat. Also, we are generally at elevation, so I myself, even though I'm not in the mountains, we're considered like foothills, front range area, we are still over 4,000 feet in elevation. So the intensity of the sun is also different. And my broccoli just has not liked where I have put it every year. I have put my broccoli in several different places throughout the last 3 years, and it just has not been super happy. So I am going to give it one more year. I believe this is probably going to be my last year attempting to grow broccoli because it always bolts on me. I've grown it in the shade. I've grown it in part shade, part sun. I am running out of options here. So this may be my last attempt at broccoli, but I at least needed to give it one more try to know that I really put in a good effort in trying to learn how to grow this really delicious and super healthy plant here in the state of Colorado.
And the red Pontiac is already breaking through.
This is going to be my third year attempting to grow potatoes. My first year, I put potatoes in the long bed in our backyard up along the fence, and the potatoes were looking so promising. However, in 2023, we had an incredibly wet spring. That's not super normal for us in terms of rain. We do get snow in the spring, but the amount of rain that we had was intense. And so we didn't have very well draining soil. The soil was very sandy and very clay-like, and we waterlogged the potatoes. The potatoes looked so great. And then by the time all of the rain was done, the potatoes were so waterlogged and so unhappy, and the soil was just so compact that the plants, the greens of the potatoes ended up dying on me before they ever reached the full maturity. And so my potato harvest, I did get one, but it was very small and humble. And the second year, I put the potatoes in the back half of the bed that I'm currently planting in. We did end up cutting this bed in half, so there used to be another half of this bed, and I put the potatoes in the back half of that, and they didn't get enough sun. And so the potatoes did absolutely nothing, on top of the fact the soil was incredibly compact, so it was really hard for the potatoes to expand and take root. So the potatoes for 2024 were a complete and utter flop. So this year, now that we have tilled all of the beds and incorporated a lot of organic material and some good compost, I have high hopes for the potatoes this year. We don't need a crazy harvest, but I would like the feeling of knowing that I did successfully grow some potatoes of reasonable size. So I am growing Pontiac red potatoes and I am growing Yukon gold potatoes, and we shall see what they do. If this is a success, I would like to continue growing potatoes in our garden, but only time will tell, and it will depend on all the other things that I am growing. I didn't grow our own onions or our own garlic in our garden this year. That is something that my parents are growing for me because they actually have the space, unlike Reed and I, which is okay. This is the phase of life we are in. We are making do with what we have, but it'll just depend on what all I want to grow and how I can make everything work in.
And just like that, we have more plants in the ground. It's super exciting. Those potatoes looked really good. That soil is nice and loose. It's got a lot of manure and compost in it, so I'm really hoping that that does much better. This will be my my third year growing potatoes, and my first 2 years they were a really big flop. So I really got my fingers crossed that this is a good spot for them, good sun, they're protected, and they don't get utterly waterlogged this year. So now I just need to water all of this in, and then we're going inside to work on some kitchen projects, and so that will be coming up next in the next video. So thank you for being here, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time we are getting more plants in the garden or we are cooking up something good. Bye.